How's it going? I'm Josh Hare, the owner and brewer at Hops and Grain Brewing, and you're watching the Beer Diaries.
Rolling fast down I-35 through the day and past the
Hey folks, I'm Greg Zeschuk from the Beer Diaries, here with Josh Hare from Hops and Grain in their tap room, an awesome location, having some delicious beers. Apologies because we're drinking the small beers today because it's actually before 10 a.m. and the Beer Diaries rule is no full pints till 10:15, and after that, the wheels are off. So thanks a lot. Pleasure being here. Thanks for hosting us.
Definitely, we're happy to have you.
Yeah. So you guys have been around about 8 months. And lots happened in that 8 months. What's the experience been like? You've kind of probably started brewing and it's just exploded. The demand's there. What are you seeing?
It has been a lot like that. It took us about a year to get open, so we went from this long, drug-out, painful process of trying to open to a very fast, get ready a thirsty city to consume all your beer. So it's been awesome.
And you have two regular beers out right now: the Alt-eration and also Pale Dog. It's a pale ale. What's the reception of those been? And we're going to talk a little bit, especially the Alt in a little bit, but both of those, what have beer fans been saying?
It's been great. They're both, the Altbier style is fairly rare, I think, just commercially available in the US, so it was a fun style to launch, but also a difficult style to kind of market, make sure people understood what an Altbier was.
Right.
But once they tried it, it's been great reception. It's a very German influence here, so beers that have a good malt profile tend to take off well. And we keep the alcohol dialed down enough and give it a nice crisp finish, so it's easy drinking. And then the pale ale is a little bit more appealing to folks that like a little hoppier beer.
Yeah, because it's kind of like, it's a slightly hoppier pale, but still a pale. It's not quite to an IPA level, but it's a really nice, very delicate hop profile too. Some nice floral and grassy and citrus hops. And like I said, like the Alt has had a huge impact. If you look over my right shoulder there's a World Beer Cup award, which is huge. Like that's a big deal. That's one that it's held every 2 years. The World Beer Cup.
Every other year.
You're competing against. I think I saw there were 4,000 entries overall. Mm-hmm. And to beat probably some heavy German competition for that beer.
Definitely. Like 75% of the entries in that category were from Germany.
And they must have been like, Austin, Texas. Like, what the hell? Like, what did that feel like? Were you there? And you?
Oh yeah. The award ceremony at the end of the Craft Brewers Conference is really, really cool. It's a huge auditorium. 4,000 people roughly there. And you walk up on stage, shake hands with Charlie Papazian, and we were. You always hope for a medal when you go to a competition like that, but we'd been brewing for 3 months when we submitted the samples for judging. So, we had high hopes, but again, weren't going to be disappointed. And we heard him announce the bronze and then the silver, and we kind of both kind of looked off, and then they announced us for the gold, and
that must have been blowing your mind, right?
Oh, it was crazy, yeah. Expletives left and right, and
no.
But it was really cool.
Yeah, it's great. Also, it's awesome for the Austin beer scene. I think we talked a little bit about Texas in general. I think Live Oak the Primus came in second, and St. Arnold won, I think, a bunch of medals. We were saying. Yeah. So now you've got this brewery up and running. You have a tasting room we're sitting in right now. Mm-hmm. You do tastings twice a week, I think Fridays and Saturdays. Right. You're doing tours on Saturdays. What kind of numbers are you pulling in here? Are you seeing a lot of people show up?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, Fridays, because we don't give tours on Fridays, we see a lot more of like the regular crowd on Friday that leave work early, And
they know where to get beer.
And they know where to come, and and there's a lot of beer on tap. We generally have at least 4 or 5 available, sometimes up to 8 or 10. And then Saturdays are just chaotic. We have close to 150 people that come through every weekend. Most of them buy pint glasses.
That's awesome.
So it's been great. It's been great.
And obviously, that's a big thing for like local marketing, like getting people aware of your beers and getting up there.
Yeah, the connection, consumer-producer connection, is something we're really passionate about. And there's a few industries where you get to go buy or, in this case, sample the product from the person that made it right in your town.
Well, that's what this show's about, really too. Cool. Like, this show's about, like, taking guys like yourself. I mean, you think of it from the concept of, hey, I drink this stuff. I kind of want to know where it comes from. Right. I want to know who's behind it and how they make it. Yeah. You touched on something that's interesting, too, the greenhouse stuff you're doing. So up on the board back here, we have a number of other offerings. I mean, these are the Alt-eration and the Pale Dog are your main. Sorry, we got crickets here. It's Texas in the summer. Right. But they're your main beers. I mean, they're cans, so you can get them at like H-E-B, Whole Foods, like just places around like all over town. You get them on tap a lot of places. But you guys are trying out a lot of new stuff too. Probably like for future batches, I'm expecting that you'll can. But what kind of stuff are you doing in the greenhouse?
Yeah, we made a pretty big equipment commitment up front and purchased a whole separate brew house aside from our main 15-barrel brew house, and we call that system the greenhouse. And it brews about 100 gallons at a time, so we get 6 or 7 kegs for each batch. And then we serve it all in here. Since October, we've done 20 different styles.
Wow.
And it's fun because we serve it here and we still have enough, to sell to a few smaller select bars here and there each time we release it. But it's been great. People come in just for that.
Well, that's the thing. I think what people don't realize, you guys are always, there's other brewers around town who do very much the same thing. I mean, they got like really neat experimental stuff in their tap room. And, it's funny for me as a local, the Austin beer scene, I'll go to the beer pubs and stuff, but I didn't realize you guys had such awesome stuff on site here. So it's kind of like, oh my goodness, now the rotation's got to be, you got to hit all the different breweries and stuff. So in terms of stuff that what's the process for when you pick one that you want to take from the greenhouse to the full production? Do you have to change the recipe? Do you sort of think of, okay, how am I going to start now really more mass producing this? How does that work for you?
It's been a little bit easier going from 3 barrels up to 15. The biggest, I guess, struggle just in a startup brewery is that for most of us at least, we brewed a lot of homebrew batches to test recipes, to formulate recipes. And then you go from anywhere from 5 to 15 gallons and jump up to 500 or 1,000. And that's not exactly a linear, it's not just proportionally, it stays the same. So from 3 barrels to 15 is a little easier, and then from 5 or 10 to 3 is a little bit easier. Yeah. So it helps us, at least on that end of it. But a lot of the stuff we've done is just ideas that we had. I had a lot of recipes that I had to put together before we opened and wanted to try out.
I was curious about, were you a professional brewer in any capacity prior to this, or were you a home brewer?
I started out home brewing when I was 19, because you can buy ingredients to make beer without being 21. So I found that as a pretty cool little loophole.
Nice.
And I've done a lot of volunteering everywhere I've lived. I worked at a few little brew pubs in Boulder.
You're up in Colorado, So I mean, that's a real center of the beer world, obviously.
Yeah, great place. And served food at a couple of brew pubs, helped out in the brewery, volunteered a lot. So yeah, that was really where I guess my commercial experience came from.
Yeah, but I mean, really, brewing at this level, though. I mean, this you came out of the woods and made a world-class beer. It's pretty amazing.
We're pretty stoked. Yeah, we did. It was really lucked out in finding the one full-time employee that we had up until I guess a month ago when we hired our second employee.
Yeah, because this is a real family operation.
Yeah, definitely small crew.
Real intimate. What do you find in the local Austin beer scene? Like, how do you find interacting with other brewers, and like I tend to find it's real cooperative. Like you guys are still, like do you guys share stuff and share information? Like how does that all work?
Yeah, I think we're all very, there's a level of competition just in that we're trying to make the best beer out there. We all want to make the best beer out there, and we all obviously need to sell our beer. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to get shelf space, we need to get tap space, but we have beers with most of the brewers in town at least once a month, if not more frequently. I've got some really, really close friends that them and their wives hang out with my wife and I that also work at other breweries, and it's incredible. There's a great amount of camaraderie there. We all, we don't share all of our secrets with each other, but it's,
but you can
bounce questions and
and you're in it together.
Right.
I think that's real positive.
Yeah, we're definitely, the more we can do for the craft beer scene here together, the better it is for all of us.
Another thing, a big part of what you guys do, I saw it online, also some of the stuff around here is sustainability. 1% for the planet, that kind of stuff. Like, what was the thinking behind that? Like, how? I mean, obviously, hey, it's a great thing to do, but it sounds like you guys are taking it one step further and really taking specific actions, like your brew biscuits back there and that sort of stuff. What's been the thinking to sort of that sustainability element?
All through my history, I guess, is what I'd say. I'm still not really an adult, but my adult life, I spent a lot of time backpacking and spent a lot of time just in the woods through my college years and the summertime, and I found myself really concerned with the state of our environment, I guess, and mostly from a lack of responsibility on the consumer level, because producers do what consumers do, and they're going to make products as cheaply as you're going to buy it, and as unrecyclable as you're going to buy it, and so I felt like going into launching a business, it was very important for us to hold our consumers a little bit more responsible for what they do with our containers when they're done with them, but then also package it in a container that is a little bit more friendly to the environment in a recyclability aspect. And then take all the things that we do in an incredibly resource-intensive industry, which is brewing. You know, we use so much water, so much grain,
right?
And so much of that can be reused after we're done using it for our process. So we put a tagline of craft beer sustainability, just mainly to remind ourselves that, you know, at the end of the day, that's what we're in it for, is to keep our craft sustainable. This industry is incredible, and the more people we can show to it, the more sustainable we are. And then things like taking our spent grain to make dog treats.
Let's pull that forward here. I mean, this is like a real cool thing, and like obviously handmade. You guys make this on site here?
No, just right up the street.
Right up the street.
A commercial kitchen.
And you take the grains, you make dog biscuits. And it's pretty amazing. Like,
and this has been our biggest R&D person right there. That's my golden retriever that I've had for like 9 years.
So you lay out a bunch of different biscuits, different formulations.
Right. You gotta try them out. And these, grain is really, really high in fiber.
Yeah.
And the carbohydrate levels have really been reduced.
It's whole grains too.
Right,
I mean, that's interesting because
when
when you think about it, like one of the health things I like to think about with beer is it's a whole grain beverage, right? So.
Yeah, and so that, I think before we launched this commercially, the biggest thing was testing fiber levels, because you've got to very quickly balance that out if you're a pet owner.
Make sure it's
not gonna
too much.
Yeah, not gonna wreck your dog's system.
So I mean, the sustainability stuff is very, very important. Obviously, a lot of thought went into that. I mean, a lot of thought probably went into the brew house, the greenhouse. Do you want to describe a little bit about that, a little bit about the facilities, and what you guys actually have here?
Definitely. We when we went into the process, formulating a business plan and figuring out, capacity and what we could afford in terms of space and all of that, we decided on a system from a company called Premier Stainless. They're out on the West Coast. They make lots and lots of equipment for the craft brewing industry. And so we went into it. We've got right at 5,000 square feet total here, with another 5,000 square feet that we can kind of have options to expand into later. But we went with a 15-barrel brew house. So barrel is 31 gallons roughly, and so we can pump out. This year we're hoping to do about 1,200 barrels total in our first year of production. The fermenter sizes that we bought are twice the size of the brew house, so that we're not limited to size with our fermenter. It's just whatever we can push out on the brew house. We do 2 batches a day pretty easily to fill up our fermenters, and then beyond that we went to a 3-barrel system. So if you look at the size of our main fermenters, roughly 900, a little more than 900 gallons, and then our 3-barrel system, which brews 90 gallons. So it's about a tenth of the size per batch that we do with our regular brew house. So it's funny. We joke around and call it cute because the fermenters are no more than like this high. And the whole system is pretty small, right? And we have it positioned right next to our main brew house, right across from it, because we use a lot of the same hoses and pumps and process piping. So it's funny to see them side by side because one is big and the other's just.
What's the deal with Noonan back there? There's a tank back.
So Noonan is it's the name of our lagering tank. So we the Altbier style is a very complex beer to brew. It's fermented similar to what an ale ferments at, but then it's treated like a lager post fermentation. So it's aged cold. Lager means to lay down in German. So the idea is that you put it at a cold temperature, let it sit and age.
The slower fermentation process is
right, and so it finishes out that way. There's more surface contact with the yeast, so yeast will actually clean up, the byproducts of fermentation and some of the off flavors that every yeast produces. So that lagering tank is where the alt really matures, and it takes about 6 weeks start to finish to make that beer. But one of my favorite craft beer figures, one of the pioneers, has passed away now, but his name's Greg Noonan. He's written a couple of incredible books. Probably got deeper into the chemistry and science of brewing than anybody had at that time. Just incredible guy, lived up in Vermont, and so that's kind of because we're doing stuff a little bit more traditional than most breweries, in the U.S. We're not just pumping out ales as fast as possible. We really
we're devoted to
right. So we're since I learned so much from Greg Noonan and the techniques of lagering, we felt it was only necessary.
Awesome. So really neat facility here. I mean, this building is a sort of some kind of warehouse in transition. And I think you mentioned earlier, there's like art studios around. Like this is actually a real cool overall facility. How's it feel to be part of this community? What's that like?
Oh, it's awesome. We're conveniently, I say, located at the dead end of 6th Street. So everybody that comes into Austin knows what 6th Street is. And so it's been a very easy thing to direct people to. But this warehouse is 50,000 square feet total. And every tenant that's in the building accesses from the inside. So none of us have exterior doors. So it's like an inside shopping mall, I guess, but all manufacturing kind of light industrial studios. We have a glass blowing studio that's across the hall. They're always over there making some of the coolest stuff. They've made tap handles for us and pint glasses and really neat stuff like that. We have another company across the hall called Sky Candy, which is a aerial arts studio.
Oh, really?
So you can learn, I mean, I joke, but it's like Cirque du Soleil in training. And so when we have our tour days and we walk by there and there's people swinging from the rafters and trapeze.
That's how they had a lot of beer. They have the
right,
beer
right.
and
So
then they go up on that.
we've got to have our little waiver that says,
Don't go to Sky
I will not
Candy.
go to Sky Candy after 4 beers.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, it's a cool mix of artists, which we feel we are very much that as well. And East Austin is just rich with culture, and it's full of art studios. Every street you drive down in East Austin has got stuff that you would never know was there. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and the beer itself is very much an artisanal pursuit now. The way you guys do it with care and love and attention is really important.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the beer itself. We'll move this back here for a second. So. Talking about this, let's pull those cans up and we'll put them behind. This is like major product placement, folks, but that's what we're trying to see. Look at that. Look how beautiful. So, I mean, these are the 2 main beers you guys produce right now. Yeah, these are commercially available, obviously on tap, but also canned. What's the thought on cans? Like, you want to obviously to get into consumers' hands. There's a lot of options. I believe you hand can as well. What was the thinking on cans?
So we approached it. I was very passionate about getting our product into package very, very early on. I think draft is a great thing. It's a great place, to go to a bar or restaurant and have beer on draft. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is get our beer into as many people's hands as possible, and understanding that most of us drink the bulk of the beer that we drink either at home or to friends or a place where you've got to take package. You can't just tote a keg around with you.
Growler.
Right.
You can't always do that. Yeah.
Right. So we chose to do package early on. I was committed to that, and then looking at the aspects of glass versus aluminum, we always tried to keep the environmental impact in mind. So we chose cans for that, and there's lots of argument on the creation of glass versus aluminum. There's a little bit more resource usage, I guess, to create aluminum, but once it's created, it's infinitely recyclable. So that was a passionate thing for us. We're also very active. We backpack and go down on the Greenbelt all the time, mountain bike run. And so the portability aspect was huge.
Yeah,
we love live music. We play disc golf a lot. And so all those things where you can take beer with you, and we'd rather not
you can sell, you could hey, this could be sold in venues, for example.
Right, exactly. So that was a big piece of it too. And then we were very passionate about getting our brand out there, like having something that people recognized. And a can is 360 degrees of branding real estate.
Lots of stuff.
So a bottle was kind of limiting in the paper application, and then the equipment aspect of it. With cans you have to buy a ton of them up front.
Yeah, so there's these pallets of cans out there.
Yeah, you have to buy like 100,000.
And then there's that dude with the thing rolling, and you're like, like everyone, like holy cow. But hey, I think for now, I mean, maybe if you guys get massive or even moderate size, I mean, you can automate that. That's one of the cool things too.
And we already have an automated line on order, so we
that's awesome.
We maxed out capacity on that canning line, and I call it a line, but it's literally you're holding 2 cans and filling them and then seaming one at a time.
That's great.
It goes really slow. We do about 8 cases an hour. And most, packaging lines refer to cases per minute. And we talk about it in hours.
It's different terms.
Yeah, but it was a great way to get package out there in an inexpensive machine.
That's awesome. So on the beer itself, let's talk about the Alt. Cool. Traditional German style, originally from Dusseldorf, I believe. Obviously a brown, not as hoppy, but there's a little hoppy, which is great. Actually, I really like that part of it. But also nice and malty beer, but still again pretty light. How do you what was your thinking with this, and why go there? That's a really interestingly challenging beer to make.
Yeah, the Alt style has been one of my favorites ever since I started homebrewing. I had a friend of mine that his parents lived in Dusseldorf when we were in college, and I started homebrewing. He was like, "Oh, try to make an Alt." That's what my parents drank forever. So I tried it, and the first batch actually came out pretty good. It was my first crack at creating a recipe on my own rather than just buying from the homebrew shop what was available. So that's when I really got turned on to the style, and I've always liked darker beers,
right?
But there's a time and a place for a rich, roasty, bitter stout,
right?
And I wanted something dark, full of character, malty, but crisp and clean, finished like a lager.
Yeah, because there's a nice hops profile on that. That's the thing because often if you have an English brown or that sort of beer, obviously it's or some of the Belgian browns, there's more malt, less hops,
right?
But this has a nice hops.
Yeah.
Not a bite, but definitely an element to it.
Right. There's just enough bitterness to really clean up, the malt.
Yeah.
And it's most of the Germans that brew Altbier call it a bittersweet beer.
Yeah.
And it very much is that. It's malty up front, clean through the middle, because it's lagered and it's treated like a lager, it's got that smooth lager-esque finish. And then the bitterness is there to just finish it all off.
No, it's really nice.
Make you want to, once you've swallowed it, you want to drink another one. So.
Yeah, then the Pale Dog, obviously, it's pale ale.
Right.
And we talked a little bit about it earlier. I mean, it's actually probably a little hoppier than your average pale ale, but not overly. It's like a nice, still very delicate hop profile, a bit, bit citrusy, a bit grassy.
Right.
What's the thinking there? What was your goal with this beer?
We battled back and forth. When I say we, I mean I battled back and forth on whether or not I wanted
With
an
yourself,
IPA.
you were like,
right. I was like, what is it going to be an IPA? Is it going to be a pale ale? I really, enjoy the complexity that hops provide. I've never been a huge fan of bitterness. I really appreciate the flavor and aroma that come from hops. Bitterness there just is a necessity to balance out the sweetness, but never really liked beers that just melted your face off. And so I wanted to do a beer that had the character of a hoppy beer. We call it an APA because it's not a pale ale and it's not an IPA. It's American pale ale.
Yeah, because it's definitely between a traditional, whether it's English pale or some of the other types of pales out there, and an IPA. It's somewhere in the middle. It's actually, like I said, really nice, also real floral with the hops as well, and then nice finish. I mean, really nice thirst quenching. It's really both these beers are. It's interesting talking to the brewers in Austin. I mean, I think one of the things that people always have to think about is, okay, can you drink this in the summer? Yeah. It's a consideration. Right. And you can have some seasonal releases, obviously in winter that are a little hardier, but as an all-around beer, having that character, and then especially with the maltiness and actually being drinkable in the summer is pretty impressive. Wow. So they're both delicious.
We're enjoying them. We figure if it's going to be in cans, it needs to be,
Yeah. You gotta be.
It needs to be something that you're drinking a few of.
And up on the wall there's a couple. There's like you have an IPA up there. I think double IPA.
We have both. Yeah, we've got an IPA on that we. This is the third IPA batch that we've done on the greenhouse. All of them have been hopped differently. We kind of call them our hop projects.
So you try different configurations,
different varieties, different processes. Most of where the hop character comes from in our beers is dry hopping, and so we have we've been playing around with some pretty complex dry hopping schedules, and so that's what all of those IPAs have done. And then the Hop Dog was a beer, double IPA, but it was brewed specifically to go into bourbon barrels. So what we have on the tap wall is just the first ones. We kegged off just a little bit of it. And then put all the rest of it into oak barrels.
Oh, cool. So that was actually one thing we hadn't touched on, I don't think, on the interview, was like you guys are doing a lot of barrel aging of beers as well. That's going to be a big focus for you guys. Yeah,
we're really excited about it. It ties right in with what we like to do with the greenhouse and experimenting and doing smaller projects that can kind of turn people on to beer in a totally different way than what most are used to. So we've got a lot of French oak red wine barrels that we've been aging in, as well as bourbon. We've got about 24 of them that we're using right now, and I'm going to keep bringing them in as we can find them.
That's awesome. So obviously, you guys have been doing really well, and I think one thing you mentioned was you're expanding. Can you talk a little bit like what's happening from an expansion perspective for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. We started out with a fairly small amount of fermenters. We really wanted to get our product out there and make sure that we could keep it consistent and brew the beers that we wanted over and over and over. And now we're at a point where we're maxed out on capacity. Our small canning operation is our big limiting factor right now. So we've got 7 more 30-barrel fermenters coming. I'll take that back. 2 fermenters, another packaging tank, 2 more lagering tanks like Noonan that we spoke about earlier.
We've had to find some other luminaries.
Right, I know. Gotta maybe times 2. And then 2 more tanks for our greenhouse, which allow us to kind of expand on that. So we're really excited about that, and an automated canning line.
Which I think that poor gentleman back there who's canning all day long,
he's
got a smile from ear to ear, I'm sure. He's like, yes.
Well, it'll take us from, right now, it takes us about 5 days of packaging to empty a bright tank, which is where we package and carbonate beer. And this system will allow us to empty that in about 3 hours. So it'll be a very very welcome sight to have that in. So.
That's awesome. Well, one thing I always do is I always declare my favorite. And I gotta say, it's actually a tough one because I actually am a big fan of pales, and this one's really lovely, delicate. But hey, I'm going with the judges. It's the easy call, obviously. The world-class Alt-eration is spectacular. It's just a wonderful. If you like brown beers at all, but with more character and with like I said earlier, nice bittersweet hops profile. This is the beer. Definitely one of my favorites. One of my favorites in town as well. So
thanks.
Wonderful beer.
It gets consumed the most around here too.
There you go. Good for breakfast. Good for lunch. Exactly. Good for dinner.
Put it in your oatmeal. Yeah, that's great.
There you go. Cool. Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate.
Thank you.
Actually, we're supposed to do our cheers. We do a special cheers at the end, like cheers, skol, na zdrovia, all kinds of sayings that we can think of. And so, thanks for having us. Really appreciate being here.
Thank you.